Well, so good morning everyone. Welcome to the fourth session of this summer internship. And today we are gonna discuss about Pandas, which is a Python library for data analysis, as well as we are gonna discuss about Matplotlib. So one thing we are gonna discuss about exploratory data analysis, and one thing we are gonna discuss about explanatory data analysis. So there is a difference between these two things, so we will discuss everything in detail. So this is the goal today, and today the class is gonna be of 2 hours probably, because I have to cover these two topics which are very wide. Okay, so be patient with me. If you get tired, let me know. Okay, so far we have discussed about NumPy. Okay, so we played with NumPy and we discussed how it is better than Python list. We discussed how it is comparatively it acquire less memory in comparison to Python list. We discussed everything and we ran a few programs, and I shared the Python notebook file with you. I hope you played with it, right? And you draw some meaningful conclusion. You put some edits, you put some print comments, print statements, and you see how the code is behaving, right? This is the thing you have to do, and I am not gonna check each every of you like, okay, have you done it. If you have some query, you are always welcome to ask. You can reach me on WhatsApp, or we can have the discussion on discussion session, right? So okay, so let's start today. Let's start discussing Pandas. I like Pandas. Okay, so this is my Jupyter notebook for today. So we're gonna discuss Pandas. So this notebook covers all key topics for Pandas library, right? And here we will introduce Pandas, and we will get to know how to work with files both manually without Pandas and using Pandas, so that you get some motivation about why should we use Pandas, right? Over the traditional file system. Then we will cover series, like series as a function in Pandas, like some attribute. Then we will talk mainly about DataFrames, which is very important in Pandas when we are playing with data. And then we will talk about selection of columns, data, manipulating files, manipulating data, manipulating row, manipulating column, sorting data, cleaning data, and we can do it in Pandas very easily. And at last we will talk about, in summary, we will talk about how to basically take input from the file using Panda, and how to create output, right? We will discuss about it. We will discuss about input today. Then at last we will discussing about comparison to help you learn about effective data handling. So this session is gonna be very important for the participants who obviously wants to do some scientific computing. For example, in experimental high energy physics, or any physics, in experimental high energy physics or theoretical physics, you have to deal with a large amount of data, right? And in that case you have to know like how to sort the data, because sometimes the data which we have has some weird stuff. It has some empty columns, it has some infinite numbers, like some entries. Then it has like various things which we don't know, which we don't need, sorry. So we have to think about how to get rid of all those things, how to manipulate our data. So it's going to be very important for the people who are interested in scientific computing, as well as for the people who are later interested in data science. So for data science, it is very important library in Python, and we have advanced data handling system like SQL. I'm not going to cover that because this is beyond our scope. So you can also explore that thing later after the Pandas by yourself. So if you are looking into data analysis, data scientist job in the future, so this is a very basic fundamental tutorial about Pandas, so which will help you. It is a stepping stone for doing a rigorous data analysis later on. Okay, getting started with Pandas. So Pandas is a powerful Python library for data manipulation, cleaning and analysis. You will get to know why, and then why use Pandas. So what are the tasks that it can perform? It can load CSV. Okay, it can not only load CSV, CSV is comma separated value, I guess. Okay, so it can not only load CSV, it can load any text file, right? It can load Excel as well. So but like in my case, in theoretical particle physics, I mainly deal with CSV, not even CSV, I mainly work with data files, and I can choose my delimiters. I can choose whether I want to work with spaces, whether I want to work with commas, so that the two columns are separated, right? So in general, I have written CSV because whenever I'm trying to read some text file, the property of pandas which I am going to use is CSV, right, comma separated value. Now if we talk about without pandas, how do we do that? We have some open function in Python, and with that open function we can call our file, we can import our external file into our code, and we can do some loop logic in order to manipulate or play with the data or read the data, right? Here we are just reading the data. With pandas it is just one line thing. You can just write a one simple line and you can import your file into your system. So we will be talking about that. And then the second task is, let's say, filter rows. So sometimes you want to filter your rows, right? You don't want that particular row, you want some row like which start from index 5 to 10. You don't want the first 4 rows. So this is a simple example, but you know what I mean. So if you want to filter some rows as per some age group, as per some name, as per some number, then in without pandas you have to do some loop logic, right? For let us import first file, then use some for loop, and then sort it out using while loop or something. You need to put some condition, if else, or but in pandas you can do that in a single line. So I will tell you how. So that is also a very important property of pandas. Then we have group and summarize. So if you want to do some manual aggregation, let us say we want to make a sum of some entries which we have loaded from the file itself. Again we have to do some loop logic, but in pandas we have inbuilt function. We can just say df data frame, df is a data frame, dot group by. We can do sum, we can group by anything. So it is very simple. So we will get to know. We have a full Python notebook today ready. Okay, installation. So when you loaded Anaconda in your system, so there are two versions of Anaconda. One is Miniconda and one is Anaconda. Miniconda comes with the limited packages, but Anaconda has everything. So I don't think you need to install Pandas separately, but still if it is missing, your compiler is complaining, then you can install, if you are in a Anaconda terminal, you can do pip install pandas. If you are on a Mac system, you can do homebrew like brew install pandas. You can also use Xcode. Okay, so then now as we imported our NumPy library, right? How did we do that? We did import NumPy as np, right? We are importing some library from Python itself. So here we will do import pandas as PD. So again I would like to emphasize that PD is just a name. It can be anything, it can be anything you want, like it is just an alias, but we will always stick to PD because it is easier to talk, easier to communicate when we talk about that. Okay, so don't ask me why it is called pandas. There must be some stories. I don't know whether it is related to the real panda, what is that, the animal. Okay, what else? Pandas versus Excel versus SQL versus NumPy. Okay, we have three different basically tools to manipulate data, to do data analysis, which is Pandas, Excel and SQL. And we have NumPy as well, which can do some of the, it can also manipulate data. It is a powerful tool, but it doesn't read. Okay, you cannot open a text file or a data file in NumPy. It is just for analysis. Okay, what are the comparison? The comparison is, let us talk about Excel first. So what are the strengths of Excel? You have, everybody I hope is familiar with Excel. So Excel is a graphical user interface system. So you can easily import your file. You can see it in your column and you can edit it manually, whichever cell you are interested in. And it has a easy user interface. You have like lots of tools, and we have Google Sheet, which is the online alternative of Microsoft Excel, and today we also have, not today, like from couple of years, we also have OneDrive, which is Microsoft Excel's online version through OneDrive. And what are the weaknesses? The weaknesses is that Excel is slow. So whenever we are dealing with a large amount of data, like whenever we talk about scalable data, then it is gonna be slow. First weakness. And then second is you have to do lot of manual stuff. If you want to change one cell, then you have to go there and change it, then you will do some control F and all those things. And let me tell you one thing, you see the power of non-graphical user interface system versus graphical user interface system is, the non-graphical user interface system, some such as command shell or coding any sort of programming language, they are very fast in comparison to graphical user interface, right? So in Excel, the computer has to load the whole binary, whole graphical user system, like it has to design everything, it has to portray everything with colors and all those, design. So it is a big task for computer to do. But the power of other programming languages or SQL or NumPy or Panda is that like they are more like, they are not a graphical user interface system. Okay, so you can just manipulate with your data using a command shell or using some VS code with terminal, right? You are basically doing something beyond, before the graphical user interface, you are doing something in the non graphical user interface system. Second is SQL. SQL is also very efficient query language for big data, so it is very widely used in data industry. If you want to go, you must have to learn this language, structured query language, but it is not ideal for transformation logic. Okay, so if you want to manipulate your data, if you want to do some transformation inside your code, like play with NumPy, play with numerics, then it is not recommended. It is just to analyze the data, make some meaningful conclusion, sort the data and all those things. So most of the, not most of the website, all the website use SQL at the backend. So they basically manage their data by using SQL. So if you are familiar with WAMP server, you can create a local host in your machine where you can basically, if you have the HTML code of your website, and then you can manage your backend using SQL there. So in PHP MyAdmin, like WAMP server, you can do all those stuff. Okay, then we have NumPy. NumPy is fast, as we discussed, low level array operation we also discussed, but the weaknesses are no labels and harder for tabular data. So NumPy is good, like when we are playing with data which is in the code itself, you are not loading it from outside, right? And you cannot put a gigantic data inside your code itself, code snippet I am talking about. We can talk about some arrays, we can create some infinite, a big array using an NumPy as well. But if you want to import data from outside, which is a big data, or sometimes you also have to do data transfer, right? Then it is not good. So its weakness is it doesn't have labels, and it is harder for tabular data. When we have a large amount of data, for example, we have like 30 columns data with 500 rows. I'm still saying like this is a very less data example I have given you, 30 columns versus 500 rows. It could be 5000 rows, right? How will you manage that thing? NumPy is not gonna help you there. Then we have Pandas. Pandas are label aware and they are fast and flexible. Panda can assign label to a particular column or particular row, and it is label aware. Label I will talk about. And then we have, it is fast and flexible. Okay, you will see that. And then the weakness is has a slightly steep learning curve. Okay, so the learning curve is not like you have to learn a lot of stuff like immediately, but it is very easy. Let me tell you, you have to trust me, right? So it is very easy. You don't have to remember. In the modern world, you don't have to remember any coding. It is just you have to remember, you have to create your instinct that how can I use that tool, right? And eventually after using the tools again and again, you get to know how things are working. Okay, so far so good, guys. This was the brief introduction about Pandas today, and we are gonna continue with the code. So far so good. Okay, very good. Thank you for engaging, guys. Okay, good. Now let us talk about pandas. I already told you about how to import pandas. Okay, now what we are gonna do, we have to deal with pandas for file import. So you can import the file, or you can also print it somehow. You can declare it as an array like we used to do in NumPy. We can also do that. So there is a series function, series properties of property of pandas. For example, if we have declared some variable s, which is declared as pd dot series, and inside this bracket we have some argument, we have some argument to the some property series, and we have declared a list here 10, 20, 30, 40. So when we are using pandas series function and when we are printing it, but what is basically printing, it is so this is an array. You can see it has converted into a tabular form. Okay, now you can see these are just numbers here, 4 numbers, like a list, like a one dimensional array. But what pandas series function has done, it has created it in the tabular form. And what is the first row suggesting? It is showing the index, corresponding index 0, 1, 2, 3. So by default the index is 0, 1, 2, 3, it starts from 0, and here we are just printing it. But if you want to put some custom index, then you can define some custom index. So it depends upon how many data entries you have. You should have also the same number of index. So if you do that, you can see I have already printed that the corresponding index for 10 is A, 20 is B, 30 is C. Okay, so this is called series function in pandas. You are not going to use that, it is just for a very basic introductory purpose, and it basically has 1D labeled array. Okay, so we labeled it. Now we have a 2-dimensional labeled table in pandas. How to load that? So basically the central idea of panda is to display things in a tabular form so that our mind can analyze it, right? If we can see some organized data in front of us, then we are better able to better recognize it, right? Now we have defined a dictionary data. This is how dictionary is defined, curly braces, and then we have some key values, key, and there are key values. So before we discussed only one key value to a particular key, but we can also put a list here, right? So we have in name, we have 3 different values. For age we have 3 different values, city we have 3 different values. Okay, so what we do, we defined a dictionary, and then we put that dictionary in the argument of function of a pandas, which is data frame. So when we put that and we printed that, okay, when we printed that, what we get is data in a tabular form. Okay, let us look how does it look before pandas. Okay, so in that case we will be able to differentiate. So if I do that, so this is how a list is appearing, right? Dictionary is appearing, and you can play with dictionary, you can play with the indices, key values, and all those things. I'm not gonna do that today. So this is how it is appearing before pandas, but I want to make it more visually appealing, right? So what do I do? I put it in the data frame function of pandas, and when I did execute this particular line, I get something like this, which is written in a very beautiful, meaningful way, so I can relate, I can see. If I just write df, it is printing it as a data frame, like it is more visually appealing, more colorful. But if I do print df only, then it is also showing me in some tabular form, but it is not visually that much appealing. The design is missing there, so you have to take care of that. These are the difference between df and print df. Okay. Oh no, what do I have done? Okay, I like this thing, so I will just go with this. Okay, so this is better. Now, very important. So what about file handling without pandas? We just had some few programs which tells you about in pandas, like data frame and series. But before going deeper into pandas, I want to discuss about file handling without pandas. So for that we need to create some CSV file and load it and process it in. So we will be processing it in pure Python so that we can compare both. Okay, so let us do that. So I have these come on, I have these content in CSV file. So let me just open it. I think this is the file. Yes, so this is data.csv and I have this content in this file. So we have the first row, which is the column name, age, city, and it is a comma separated file. Okay, so that's why there is a comma. That's how the compiler knows like which column is different from which column, right? And then we have the entries for a particular column like Alice, Bob, Charlie as a name, and similarly others. Okay, so we have this data, very simple example for data. So let me guys, let me tell you one thing. You can use this search function to replace your delimiters, right? But you have to be very careful. So it's not gonna work because my whole code is written in I am always using delimiters like comma for this particular session, but you have to be careful. So when you are changing delimiter, your code might not work, so you have to think carefully. If there is something, then you go to your file and check what delimiter are you using, and you should update your delimiter according to that. One more thing I would like to talk about is to check the spaces, right? So when we are doing control F and we put a space here, okay, so if there is a space, so it is not highlighting anything, it shows no result. But if I put a space manually here, right, then it's gonna complain, so your code might not work. So sometimes like without it you cannot see if there is a space or not. Okay, it is not visible if there is a space or not, but that might create a problem when you are loading your data into your system. So you have to be very careful